And I'm like, listen, it's perimenopause. Like I've got this, I've got hot flashes at night, night sweats. My anxiety's high, like all these things. I'm exhausted. I can't get out of bed. I have no motivation. I was 46 years old and they said, you're too young. All right, women, we are all going to go through this. We are going to experience menopause if we live long enough. And the fact is, there are some symptoms that come with it, and we don't have to suffer. We don't have to suffer alone. We don't have to go through it alone. And honestly, I was completely shocked by some of my symptoms. I was completely shocked by what my body was going through. And I had no idea what I was experiencing. I didn't know what I was going through was perimenopause. And I just thought my body was freaking out. So I think it's really important that we talk about this subject and we talk about the symptoms that you could experience and the symptoms, like there's over like 100 symptoms that you could be that you could be experiencing. I think it's important that we talk about it and know what our bodies are going through so that we can advocate for ourselves when we do go to the doctor, so that we aren't gaslit, and so we don't gaslight ourselves. I gaslit myself for so long, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But I think it's important that we talk about the symptoms and what our bodies are going through. So, hi, my name is Shannon Passalacqua. I am a high performance coach, and I also specialize in helping women through the grief of miscarriages.
And I'm Heike Fallon, a personal high performance coach. I help my clients with self-leadership and a brain-based approach on that. And yes, I'm going to add to this one too. The problem is oftentimes happened to me. I know it happened to you. You've gone to the doctor and
Yes.
you know you're not right, and they dismiss you. And it's just the worst. And they didn't know what to do with me. It wasn't until I actually have to say, doctor number 3 finally was, and I was seeking somebody actually being specialized with the extra certification in menopause, because guess
Yes.
what? The problem is, at least here in the United States, the normal, typical educational path, the OBGYNs do not learn about menopause. It's
And
not
how to treat it.
and it's not in their curriculum. All the research has been done on how to get pregnant, pregnancy, all of that. There's
Fertility, as long as
not
we're
a
just
whole lot
making
of
babies.
it's all about making the babies, but there's not a whole lot of research on menopause. And so it's very confusing, because we also, everybody thinks it's like just, oh, you don't have your period anymore when you're in your 50s. I didn't know it all can start as early as 40s or 35. And
I think mine started
symptoms
in my
start
late
early.
30s. And I think what's important, I'm going to jump in really quick, sorry, is there are symptoms that are not talked about a lot. And you and I both experience symptoms that are very rarely discussed. And these are signs that you are going through perimenopause, and don't ignore them.
Yes.
Because there's all the regulars, right? Hot flash, night sweats. And that's pretty much what people talk about. Oh, your period stops, your irregular period. That's not how it started for me.
No. And the problem is now looking back, I'm like, oh, years ago. Oh, you know what? I already started. It was a perimenopausal symptoms that started. And here we go. But let me first,
Yes,
we're going to
please dive
share
in.
ours, which are actually not all on this list. Again, as we said, there's hundreds of symptoms, literally over 100, but we got like about 40 some plus here, and I'm gonna share them right now, and you may realize that, oh yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, it's me, because I wrote them all down, and I'm realizing it's not about which one do you have, but more about how many do you have. It's really not.
All. I had them all.
I get them all, but it's shocking how many. Yeah, from time to time it's this, is that. So I'm going to just ramble them down right now, but anybody listening, you might recognize there's more than one or two. It's actually a lot of them. So very typical: weight gain, anxiety, joint pain, insomnia, so not being able to sleep, any yeah, dryness and itching, hot flashes, yes, mood swings, bloating, brain fog, you know, just not remembering really well, got that. Dizziness, loss of muscle mass, digestive issues, clumsiness. Have you been banging around corners or
I dropped something yesterday. My husband always says, "Are you okay?"
all the bruises? No, you didn't get beat up. You just couldn't get that corner around the coffee table. Let's continue. Bladder changes, muscle aches, fatigue, panic attacks, tendinitis, hair thinning, obviously cycle changes. We'll talk about cycle in a sec too. There's actually phantom smell. I didn't get that, but some people, you did. Okay, cool.
My husband thinks I'm crazy. I'm like, "Do you smell that?"
Excessive sweating, and then compared to that, also the night sweat, so slightly different. Let's see, growing facial hair, headaches, tinnitus, so the ringing in the ears, sore breasts, depression, nausea, dry eyes. Let's see, what else do we have here? Muscle cramps, vaginal atrophy, any kind of stomach issues, allergies worse, or allergies starting. I got something like that going on. Breakouts, all the sudden you think you're a teenager again. And so much more. So we're going to share a couple more that we experienced, and particularly that were definitely missed by the doctors and ignored by the doctors. So
have you had itchy ears inside? Like inside, you're like,
I have not. No, the thing is, I mean, I've never, you know, for example, I think this is very important to know, especially the things that sometimes you've never really experienced are very interesting. So I never really were like down and depressed or anything like that, where I really feel like I'm like, just pull the blanket over my head. I'm like, I'm generally, you know, just kind of, you know, not the bouncy ball in the morning, but I'm usually, you know, can bring the energy. And there's been days where I'm like, I don't have any energy to pull anywhere. That was very foreign to me. And so that was already kind of like, I am not used to it. And that totally derailed me, because I'm like, I'm not used to this feeling. I've never had that feeling that I can't bring energy. And so it was very drastic for me, because I first had to figure out like how to deal with myself in that moment. That's really a challenge, because we're trying to figure out how to deal with ourselves, and at the same time, we're supposed to be there for everybody else in our roles, right? For my clients, for my family, my kids, everybody needs you, but you can't figure yourself out.
Yeah. And what I found was so hard for me was like, here I am trying to coach women and, you know, to bring about more energy, to heal through all these losses, and how to experience joy again. And I was like, I can't get out of bed. How am I supposed to coach people on this if I can't do it myself? And it turns out it was all hormonal. And something that another symptom that you and I have both discussed, which I think is hilarious. And I've brought this up to a couple of people, and they were like, "Oh my God, I had no idea." Eyesight.
Yep.
Like the moment my estrogen declines, which I know when it declines because I know it's right before my period. I know my estrogen drops. I can't see a dang thing. Everything's blurry.
I know, I shouldn't drive.
I know. I was just thinking that.
No, I literally all of a sudden couldn't read my books, and I was like, okay, this is like, okay, all right, got to go to the eye doctor again. And I used to have glasses as a child because I had stigmatism, but I went to the eye doctor, and he goes, "Oh, your eyes are the same numbers as 10 years ago. You're fine." I'm like, "No, I need glasses because I can't read, and I feel like I can't, you know, see very clearly. Can I please get glasses?" He goes, "Sure, you can get glasses, but your numbers aren't different. You're fine, right?" I'm like, "Okay." I did not know at that point it was hormone related at all. I had zero idea. I just thought, I'm like, okay, well, it's just, coming a little bit, got to do a little bit more about it. But no, it is totally hormone related, because then I realized there's certain times where I feel I use the glasses more and other times less. And I've even had times where I have the glasses on, I want to read. I'm like, I can't see a thing.
I
Even
literally still can't see.
So eyesight it's been a big one for me as well, for sure.
Okay, here's another weird one. And I don't know, I haven't heard it from anyone else. But I had it when I was pregnant. And so there's obviously like a hormonal situation with it. But I get to the point where I'm so incredibly hungry. Like it's not, I cannot satiate, I cannot fill myself up. Like I don't know what was dropping, but it was so much hunger, and I literally couldn't get out of bed because I was so hungry. I mean, my husband had to bring me food constantly. And it was just this weirdest thing. And literally, the moment I went on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, which I think we're trying to transition to menopause replacement therapy, it was fine.
Yeah, I did not have it that extreme, but I did have that as well, that I felt like, well, I just ate and now I'm hungry.
Right?
But that's also a problem, right? Because then you feel like you eat more. Yeah, well, then you get,
And then you're going to keep
weight
gaining weight.
because you're already feeling hungry. And to kind of keep track of that, for sure, I had that as well. So one other thing that happened to me way before that, I had the feeling I had yeast infections, and it was going on for really like 8 months, not just one time. And tried this over the counter stuff. It helped, but then it would come again. And I decided, okay, I'm going to go talk to my doctor. Well, my doctor goes like, oh, we can test it. Oh, test came back. No yeast infection. I'm like, okay, well, what do I have? I don't know. Like, probably going to go away. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? Should I take, I can't keep taking the over the counter. No, don't do that, because it dries out the, vaginal area. You don't want to do that. I'm like, yeah, but I'm miserable.
Yeah, but
It's itchy, it's discharge. I'm not feeling good. And it actually was also discomfort. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to switch doctors.
just power through. Just
went
live through it.
a different doctor. And I kept asking also other questions like, hey, what do you, I have this going on. What do you think? Like that one always came to kind of like a week after my period. So it's kind of weird. So it was definitely hormone related, but
Right.
I asked the new doctor, I'm like, hey, what do you think? I don't know. It's probably nothing, because if it's not an infection, you don't have to worry about it. But I'm miserable. So again, was dismissed. And it wasn't until actually 2 friends came up to me raving about hormone replacement therapy. And I was kind of like, oh, I should kind of look into things a little bit more. And maybe I should start, going to a doctor who's actually knowledgeable about this. And
trained in this issue.
yeah, and so I did. So I have a new doctor who is trained, and there's, by the way, you can, for the United States, there is, I'll put the link down there. There is a certification for specific menopause, for the doctors, and they list the doctors that are certified. So I went on their website, looked who's certified, as well. If you want to see, I wanted to see who's in network and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And decided to go on hormone replacement therapy. We're not covering therapies and what to do in this episode. By the way, this is part 1. We're going to do a part 2 because too much information at once. But not saying that everybody needs to do this, but for me, it also definitely helped and changed a lot. And I'm very thankful that my friends pointed it out and shared their information. And I think that's super important that we talk about it more. And there's more now. You find a lot more on social media and over on the internet, more information now. It's definitely more talked about. So hopefully we can also help spread the conversation that a lot of these symptoms that pop up, you're not alone, and you're more likely to have more than one. So but the yeast infection that wasn't really an infection but had all the same symptoms was definitely one where I look back and I'm like, yeah, I definitely.
So when you went on HRT, that went away?
It went away beforehand too, because I actually then worked a lot on my gut again, because of my history with my bladder. So I used to get chronic bladder infections, and my due to all that, my gut function wasn't doing so well. So I really honed in on my gut function, so my immune system, as well as taking specific women's probiotics. So there's a couple of women's probiotics that I took that really helped with that. And I was really mindful of my diet again, and changed that. And I think that helped to get that under control. So I worked more on the immune system.
Okay.
And that probably also, again, we don't have a whole lot of research on that, but changing your diet definitely, again, we're not going to go into this episode, but definitely has an impact on the diet has an impact on your hormones, and therefore so what I did there definitely helped. So it kind of shifted and went away. Let me share another symptoms I've started having, which I don't really know. I don't have allergies, but for the last few years, I think there's hardly a day my sinuses aren't congested. I'm like, they are just always somewhat congested.
For me, that happened when I was eating gluten. It also happened anytime I was pregnant. So that's interesting because estrogen goes down when you're pregnant, correct? I
So
believe. So that's interesting because I would get super congested when I was pregnant.
yeah, and so I paid attention, because it always kind of comes and goes a little, gets a little better, a little worse, and it's totally in the cycle of the hormones. So because I kept track of it, right? Because at
Oh my
some
God,
point
I'm
I'm
going to pay
like, that's so
attention.
weird. I don't have allergies. This is so weird. Um, and so I kept track of it. When it was way worse when my stomach wasn't doing as good. Yes, because there's actually a correlation between your sinuses and your gut flora. It has to do with when you that I learned long a time ago. But the bacteria in your gut actually help clear your sinuses. That's why, little side note here, that's why oftentimes kids don't need tubes, because it's not from the ear, it's actually their gut. One of my kids had that, and the doctor wanted to put tubes in, and I didn't want to do it. And I went to a specialist here, and your gut flora helps clear it. But when you have acid, the acid or acid reflux or anything going on with your stomach or your certain food, the acid destroys the bacteria that are needed to clear your sinuses. So there is that correlation. And so for me, it was like with the hormone changes, my stomach was also more sensitive because due to my history. And then I think that also kind of related then to this. So it's kind of like the ripple effect.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I
So
had a headache every day.
mm,
Just had a head every morning for I can't even remember for how long, months. I would wake up and immediately go and just take an Advil because I would wake up with a headache. And after I started HRT, literally it was like 2 days later, I was like, I haven't taken Advil for the last couple of days. My headache is just gone.
wow.
I mean, so can I tell my story?
Yeah, go for it.
Because it's frustrating.
I know. It's a
Well,
journey.
and I think, yeah, and I think it's frustrating for a lot of us. And mine started when I was younger. Like, I feel like I've always been dismissed by the medical community. I'm very sensitive, and we'll talk about this more next time. But my body is very sensitive. I react, I'm just sensitive. I had endometriosis. I can tell like what's going on with my body. And not everyone goes through that, right? My sister-in-law, one of my sister-in-laws, she didn't even know she was going through perimenopause. It just stopped. So, I mean, like for some people, they don't experience any symptoms. They might have a hot flash or two. No, that's not true for me. I've always been sensitive. I had endometriosis. Doctors dismissed me, said I was just backed up and just needed to take a laxative. I was allergic to gluten, and again, they said I was just backed up. I just need to take a laxative. When I had my miscarriages, they said, "Oh, it's normal," and I was like, "This many is not normal." And then they find out that my thyroid was too high to keep a pregnancy. Um, and then when I was going, this is what was frustrating to me at this time of my life. When I was going through perimenopause and I knew there was something wrong with my body, I knew there was something happening. And I said to a couple friends, I think I'm going through perimenopause. And even my friends dismissed me. They were like, "You're too young." And I'm like, the research I'm showing says it could start 10 years or 10 years before you
Yep.
go through menopause.
Yep.
10 years you can
Yep.
experience symptoms. Well, my mom went through menopause in her, like when she was 50. My grandma went through menopause when she was 42.
Yeah. No,
She was
absolutely.
full blown menopausal, 42, no period.
Yep.
So, and I'm more like my grandma. Um, so I was experiencing things. I was just like, I feel weird. There's something off. I wasn't on a birth control pill. Oh, I stopped taking my birth control pill because I thought, oh, I'm too old to take this. I don't like, I shouldn't take it. And I was like, gosh, it's weird. Half of the month, I feel like crap. And I shouldn't feel like crap for half the month. Like the week before my period, the week of my period, sometimes the week after, I just felt like I was like recovering all the time. And so I went to my doctor and I was like, maybe I need to go back on the pill. So we went back on the pill. That helped a little bit. And I'm like, but there's still some things going on. I'm like, I just don't feel right. Like my anxiety was a little high. I had never experienced anxiety before. I was like, gosh, I'm some anxiety. I tried everything. You know, I put my phone away. I did my workouts, meditated. There's all these things going on. So I went to my doctor. They're like, oh, no, I think it's probably just because, you know, you're a mom and you have a hard job and, you know,
You're just stressed.
pandemic, you're stressed. You know, try resting more or try getting a massage. And I was like, okay, maybe that's it. And so they gaslit me. I gaslit myself. I was like, gosh, it must be my diet. So I like dialed in my diet. I dialed in my workout. I'm like, well, gosh, you know, I feel like crap for a couple of days. I'm like, I must have eaten something. It must be something I'm eating. And I don't know, or I didn't do a good enough workout, or maybe I just need to go on a longer walk. Maybe I need to journal more.
Yeah. Do more of everything.
Right. I'm not getting the right formula. So I was like, I just don't think this is it. I did so much research and I looked into perimenopause and I mean, I listened to all the podcasts, I read all the books, and I went into my doctor again, armed with all of this information. And I'm like, listen, it's perimenopause. Like, I've got this, I've got hot flashes at night, night sweats. My anxiety's high, like all these things. I'm exhausted. I can't get out of bed. I have no motivation. I was 46 years old and they said, "You're too young. It's got to be your thyroid." Too young. I'm 46 years old. When
Now
I
it's
left, I was pissed. I was so pissed. And also I was not motivated because I felt like shit. I felt so awful. And for the next few months, I just did nothing. I just laid in bed. I cried to my husband. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what's going on. I cannot figure out what's wrong with me. I just feel like crap. My body just does not feel normal. And I would just cry. And I'm like, I'm going crazy. And then I saw one of my friends and she was like, you need to see a menopause specialist.
mm-hmm.
And then it still took me time because I was just so unmotivated. And honestly, I think it was depression. I think it was like a low form of depression. I finally went to a menopause specialist and she was like, okay, we're going to try a couple things. And we did some blood work to see because I was like, I think my Testosterone was low too.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted to get a baseline of like what my testosterone was. And so all that came back. And by the time all that information came back for our next appointment, I was like, put me on everything. Like, I'm not functioning. Like, I am not functioning. My kids are coming home and I'm in bed and I'm yelling at everyone. I can't live like this. Like, I can't. And I had no testosterone in my body. Like,
Wow.
my body
Okay.
was not absorbing testosterone.
I gotta sorry
And
to interrupt you for 1 second.
yeah,
So even though the blood test can't tell when we are starting, because it shifts, so that's a little
right.
side comment. But I had years ago, like way also in the 40s, my normal blood test and the testosterone was low. And I asked my OBGYN back then, I'm like, hey, do I need to be worried about the low testosterone? I'm like, oh, you just don't want as much sex. You're fine. Don't worry about
Oh
it.
my God.
That was
Okay,
the answer. Now, of course, back then I had no idea, but looking back, and I'm like, because that was her answer. Oh, don't worry. You just don't feel like having sex. It's okay. Everything else is fine. Don't worry that it's low.
yeah.
But
Okay. So
so sorry, didn't want to interrupt the story, but that's how you get dismissed, and it's
glad
not
you
right.
said that because I did have blood work done and everyone who's listening, for the doctors who say that you need to get blood work done to determine whether you're in perimenopause, you don't.
You
My
don't.
blood work came back normal. And it's because it was the time of the month that we took it and the time of the day and da 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 da.
It can change
And
within an hour.
it can change, it changes all the time.
Yeah.
So do not believe that. And testosterone, when I dove into the research on testosterone, besides the fact that I didn't want to have sex and I was like literally disgusted by it, I was like, do not touch me.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yep.
Besides that, it affects your motivation.
Yep. It
I
has.
had no motivation. I was a entrepreneur, a mom, and a wife, and everything else. And I had no motivation to do any of it. How am I supposed to live
Yeah.
if I have no motivation to do my job? I couldn't get out of bed.
And again, it's not like, the blood work is just a screenshot in the moment, but it still can, if it shows up again, you might want to work with it. And if you have
Yeah.
symptoms going on.
Well, testosterone, you do need to keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other thing we'll talk about next time.
Yeah.
I know we keep saying that, but testosterone is a whole other entity.
Yes.
I opted to use testosterone because I knew that my motivation was.
Yeah.
And I asked my doctor for, I knew there was a medicine to help with libido. And I asked my doctor and she dismissed it and said, you don't need that. And it's going to counteract your allergy medication. I probably wouldn't need my allergy medication if I saw hormone.
And that's another symptoms, by the way, loss of libido. So that's we haven't mentioned that one yet.
Right. Right. So any other symptoms that we haven't mentioned?
I don't know. There's
frozen shoulder. Frozen shoulder.
Yep. Frozen shoulder is very common. I've had a lot of hip pain. I've had a lot of hip pain, and once all that got regulated, and we'll talk about that again next time. Strategies, don't want to derail it too long because we're getting to the end here, but just watch the other video with strategies of what you can do. And this is really about understanding there's so many symptoms. Blood work itself can't just figure it out. You don't know, but you know how you feel. And if you're not feeling right and you have one or more or symptoms we didn't even mention today.
Well, and I'm going to mention a few because some of them are, again, different. And it wasn't until I talked to my friends about it that they were like, oh, me too. Waking up in the middle of the night, every night at 3 o'clock and not being able to go back to sleep. Like every single night. On top of that, every few weeks, almost every day, I felt like I was getting sick. And I kept telling my family, I'm getting sick. I'm going to go lay in bed. I feel like I'm getting a cold. I feel like I'm getting a flu. I can't tell you how many COVID tests I took because I was like, I am sick. And the next day I'd be fine.
Yep.
And now I don't have that. And one of my friends had the exact same thing. She's like, I thought I was getting sick all the time.
Yep. So lots of symptoms, and most
Look
of the
into
time,
it.
if most of the time, I don't know anybody who just has totally one, even your in-laws there that seem to have nothing, may have, possibly
Yeah.
had something
Brain
mild,
fog.
not as much, but it really is only the question, how many do you have? And we can address them. You're not alone. We're going to have another video on strategies on what you can do. It is a journey. We're still in it. It's not
Yeah. I mean,
over.
we're still trying to figure things out. And
There is no,
we could do 10 videos on this. I could talk about.
there's not one thing that fixes like that. We wish
Yeah.
it would. We're all different.
We're
And
changing. Our bodies are changing.
it's changing, and you got to learn really to go with it, address different things from different angles depending on what symptoms you have. Unfortunately, it is to a degree symptoms treating, but again, other strategies, as we mentioned already, the hormone replacement therapy can be one strategy where you actually go into the root problem because you're addressing the hormones. We will share in the other video, and it's linked here, other strategies, how you can also change, because diet and other habits can change the hormone levels, and you can impact them as well with other strategies besides taking hormone replacement therapy, or
it's like a playbook.
Or in addition.
Right. It's a playbook of, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
And at the end of the day is you're going to just need to know which ones are there. But this was really about, first, you're not alone. More likely you're going through perimenopausal time.
Don't gaslight yourself.
Don't gaslight yourself. Advocate for yourself. And if you get pushed off by the doctors like we have, go find the doctor that listens. And yes, it does take a couple different doctors to go to. And do look for someone who's actually trained. Because if they're not trained, it's not their fault. It's not in their curriculum. And you need to find somebody who is knowledgeable to help you with that. So we're just sharing knowledge here to get you going. So watch the other video about the things that you can do to manage all of these symptoms much, much better.
Hey.
Till that one.
Bye.
Bye.